A judge has told neonatal nurse Lucy Letby today that she'll be jailed for the rest of her life for the 7 murders that she's been convicted of babies that were inside the hospital she was caring for.
And employed as a neonatal nurse in the Countess of Chester Hospital in Chester, with specialist training in intensive care, you murdered 7 babies and attempted to murder 6 others. In the case of one of them, trying on separate occasions 2 weeks apart to murder her. You are now to be sentenced for your crimes. I order payment of the statutory surcharge in the appropriate amount. You acted in a way that was completely contrary to the normal human instincts of nurturing and caring for babies, and in gross breach of the trust that all citizens place in those who work in the medical and caring professions.
She has also been convicted of another 6 attempted murders of children while working in the neonatal unit in the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. She was only arrested in 2018, even though other members of staff had raised concerns about her being present during the deaths of several babies.
Thank you. Is anybody else? Yeah. Not a problem.
Yeah. I'm going to put you in the back seat over here.
Hold on, man, so
Yes.
get the seat.
Okay, just take a seat in there for me, Lucy. I'll move that seat forward a bit shortly.
Yeah, I've just had knee surgery. So.
Oh, right, okay.
The judge today has sentenced her for each offence that she committed, meaning she will spend the rest of her life in prison without any chance of parole. She stood trial for 7 murders and 7 counts of attempted murder, and she pled not guilty. Lucy is 33 years old, and she refused to appear in the dock for sentencing, and the families of the victims have also gave statements on the traumatic events that occurred and what they went through losing their children. The judge said that over the course of 13 months, you killed 7 fragile babies and attempted to kill 6 others. Some of the victims were only there for a day, and they were only a few days old. All of them were extremely vulnerable, and you was responsible to keep them safe. He added you were cruel, calculated, and this was a cynical campaign that bordered on satanic. The judge said you have no remorse and there are no mitigating factors to reduce this sentence. In their totality, the offences of murder and attempted murder are of exceptionally high seriousness, and the punishment, according to law, requires a whole life order for yourself.
Repeatedly to harm babies on the unit without arousing suspicion for some time. You prided yourself in your competence. Your fellow neonatal nurses spoke very highly of you, and several of them became your close friends. Having started as a Band 5 nurse at the Countess of Chester in 2012, you became a mentor to student nurses, and in the spring of 2015 gained the qualification that enabled you to care for the sickest babies on the unit or those requiring the most intensive care. You relished being in the intensive care nursery. Your messages to colleagues revealed an interest in babies that were on or were coming to the unit who had uncommon medical conditions. The methods you employed to carry out your murderous intent were only revealed by the later detailed investigation into the events of and surrounding the collapses and deaths of the babies, which commenced in 2018. There was premeditation, calculation, and cunning in your actions. You specifically targeted twins and latterly triplets. Some babies were healthy. Others had medical issues of which you were aware.
The nurse was originally from Hereford. She killed the babies by injecting them with air and force feeding them with excess milk and poisoning them with insulin. The suspicions rose when she was removed from the unit and the deaths stopped and children stopped collapsing. The judge said that the babies suffered acute pain and fought for survival, and she targeted triplets and also twins on many occasions, in one case killing 2 of a set of triplets. The families of the victims also spoke in court. All of the babies' names were hidden for their own privacy, so they're only referred to as letters such as Baby O and Baby P. The dad of Baby O and Baby P said, "I did briefly return to work, but the breakdown started happening. I became angry and bad-tempered and started having nightmares. I found it difficult to talk about what had happened, and I could not grieve properly, and the coroner and all of the post-mortem took so long that it delayed any closure. Every day life was very difficult. Just getting up and living was a struggle. It was difficult to be happy around our other children, and I felt guilty if I showed any happiness due to the loss of our 2 babies." He says that around the first anniversary of his son's death, he turned to alcohol and began having suicidal thoughts. The father says he was at rock bottom before life slowly improved, but was left gobsmacked following Lucy's arrest. He said he was always adamant there had been some form of medical negligence at that hospital, and he never believed that their deaths were natural. "I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't have any evidence to accuse anybody of committing murder. I live in constant fear of this happening to any of my other children." The families also heard that Lucy had contacted several other victims' parents and tried to talk to them, and they believe this was part of the sick satisfaction that she got from being in control and killing these children. She also searched for a lot of them on Facebook to attempt to contact them months after she had murdered their children. There has been some speculation that she may have had Munchausen by proxy, which is finding illnesses in people that don't exist. But at the same time, the counteracting argument to that is that she never wanted attention. Most people that operate under that basis want attention, but Lucy tried to be insidious and also go under the radar, and she was never suspected for so long by any of her superiors, even though her colleagues had raised concerns about the fact that she was the only one present during most of the deaths. During the police investigation, they discovered notes inside her home when she stated she was evil and she had committed the murders and she should be punished. They also found 300 confidential documents relating to the murders that she had taken home with her, and she tried to say that this was all accidental. But all of this information and also her timesheets, the fact that she was always present when these children collapsed or died, meant that the evidence was stacking up against her. She has constantly denied any responsibility for any of the murders, but today she has now been sentenced, and the families can finally start to find closure for the traumatic events that they've gone through. So I really appreciate you joining me for this update, and please leave your comments below and pay respects to the families of the victims who have lost their lives. And I'll be back again very shortly with some more news. Please don't forget to send your stories to news@scarcitystudios.com and follow on social media as well at Scarcity Studios, and the website for regular updates at scarcitystudios.com. Peace.
When the homes of both you and your parents were searched, confidential documents relating to babies, including handover and resuscitation sheets and notes and blood gas readings, were found, and there were entries in a diary recording relevant events. Handover sheets relating to all but the first 4 of the babies had been taken from the unit and kept by you. I am satisfied you started to keep these documents after those initial offences in June 2015 as morbid records of the dreadful events surrounding the collapses of your victims and what you had done to them. You had a fascination with the babies and their families, which extended to making repeated searches on Facebook for their parents, sometimes immediately following the events, and on occasions much later. A piece of paper with dense writing on both sides, setting out your thoughts and feelings, was found in the first search of your home in 2018. Amongst the phrases you wrote were, "The world is better off without me," and "I am evil, I did this." The impact of your crimes has been immense. as disclosed by the deeply moving personal statements that have been read to the court this morning. The lives of newborn or relatively newborn babies were ended almost as soon as they began, and lifelong harm has been caused, all in horrific circumstances. Loving parents have been robbed of their cherished children, and others have to live with the physical and mental consequences of your actions. Siblings have been deprived of brothers and sisters. You have caused deep psychological trauma, brought enduring grief and feelings of guilt, caused strains in relationships and disruption to the lives of all the families of all your victims. It is no part of my function to reach conclusions as to the underlying reason or reasons for your actions, nor could I, for they are known only to you. I must pass appropriate sentences according to law, addressing the seriousness of your offences, the facts of which I now describe briefly. The cruelty and calculation of your actions were truly horrific. After these last collapses and deaths, you were suspended from nursing duties, but pursued complaints of being treated unfairly. When your home was later searched, as well as your 2016 diary, which contained references to long days on the 23rd, 24th and 25th of June, and to J, E and M, respectively, there were handover sheets over that period with resuscitation notes written on the back. All, I have no doubt, being records that you kept to remind you of the details of the consequences of what you had done to those children. For the offence of murder, the sentence is fixed by law and is imprisonment for life. You are now 33 years of age and were over 21 when you committed the offences. Pursuant to the relevant prevailing statutory regime, by having regard to Schedule 21 to the Criminal Justice Act 2003, I have to determine whether the seriousness of the offences of murder, individually or in combination, is so exceptionally high that I should not make a minimum term order and you should spend the rest of your life in prison. For offences of attempted murder, whole life sentences of imprisonment are reserved for wholly exceptional cases. Over a period of just under 13 months, you killed 7 fragile babies and attempted to kill 6 others. Some of your victims were only a day or a few days old. All were extremely vulnerable. They were in a hospital where others were striving to provide them with dedicated medical and nursing care. By their nature and number, such murders and attempted murders by a neonatal nurse entrusted to care for them are offences of very exceptional seriousness. The damaging impact of your actions on others working at that hospital, including those who numbered you as a friend, betraying their trust and creating upset and suspicion, as well as eroding confidence in clinicians and nurses generally, aggravates their seriousness. This was a cruel, calculated, and cynical campaign of child murder involving the smallest and most vulnerable of children, knowing that your actions were causing significant physical suffering and would cause untold mental suffering. You created situations so that collapses or causes of collapses would not be obvious or associated with you. You removed and retained confidential records of events relating to your crimes and checked up on bereaved parents. There was a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions. During the course of this trial, you have coldly denied any responsibility for your wrongdoing and sought to attribute some fault to others. You have no remorse. There are no mitigating factors. In their totality, the offences of murder and attempted murder were of exceptionally high seriousness, and just punishment, according to law, requires a whole life order. Lucy Letby, on each of the 7 offences of murder and the 7 offences of attempted murder, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. Because the seriousness of your offences is exceptionally high, I direct that the early release provisions do not apply. The order of the court, therefore, is a whole life order on each and every offence, and you will spend the rest of your life